Now this brings us to the end of this module. What I'd like to do now is go through and wrap it up real quick by going over what we kind of covered. So we started off by taking a look back at memory lane, right? So we took a look at where Citrix started and the name that Citrix began with, which was Citrus Systems, right? And Citrus kind of has that, connection to Florida, to oranges, which is why a lot of sites and a lot of Citrix employees and Citrix fans will refer to themselves as Citrites. Citrus was then renamed to Citrix when Ed Iacobucci, its founder, realized that citrus was actually taken. Now again, remember, citrus is a fruit, and this was inevitably affected by Steve Jobs' Apple naming back in the 80s. So I'm pretty sure that's where it came from. Ed Iacobucci at the time was an IBM developer that was working on the OS2 project, which is where most of the Citrix execs back then also came from. His original vision was to create a multi-user environment for OS2. OS2 didn't take off for a number of reasons. He approached IBM and Microsoft. They didn't give him a lot of support, except Microsoft did give him access to the source code of IBM OS2. Now, he moved on later and started to see that Windows is going to be the wave of the future and decided to extend multi-user support to Windows. Eventually ended up creating the Terminal Services Edition to Microsoft, handed that code over to Microsoft, and started to develop the product, which was known as MetaFrame and Presentation Server and XenApp and now XenDesktop. All of this came from a technology that was developed back then known as Multiwin. We talked about the different events and Citrix going public and all of that, and then we started talking about the evolution of XenApp and the different releases and how it went from being multi-user to being WinView for networks to being MetaFrame 1.8 or WinFrame and then MetaFrame 1.8, MetaFrame XP, MetaFrame Presentation Server, Citrix Presentation Server, Citrix XenApp, and now Citrix XenDesktop with all of the name changes that went in there. We also talked about the independent management architecture and some of the limitations and why we're changing from IMA to the FlexCast management architecture. We talked about FlexCast a little bit, and we talked about why it is different. I went through the XenDesktop timeline with when those different versions were released. And then we talked about, or finally we talked about the any syndrome that Citrix has, which is any device, any connection, anywhere, and the fact that Citrix has support for the most devices that are out there and that you can access it over pretty much any connection, including dial-up, which is, again, those are the roots of where Citrix came from. It was developed at that time for these high latency links, so the any connection from anywhere, and you can connect to Citrix from anywhere over any device over any connection. That was the importance of Citrix. Finally, I hope you've enjoyed watching this module, and I'd like to thank you for viewing.